Welcome to Helping Clients Succeed, Filling Your Pipeline. You're in for a very exciting day today, and not only today, but for the 12-week journey. As you see on the title on the screen and on the front of your materials, this is all about a 12-week playbook system. So unlike traditional training classes where you come for a day and then you go on from there, when we leave here today, that's actually just the beginning of the journey, and we'll be together for 12 weeks going from here. One of the first things we want to do is have you take a look at and become familiar with the materials in front of you. So if I can get everybody to open up the materials, first thing I'd like you to do is just put your name and today's date right there on that first page. This will act as your participant guide for the day. We want to make sure that you keep yours. So if you just put your name into there, and then we just want to walk you through the materials so that you're comfortable with the materials that we'll be using not only today, but for this entire 12-week journey. First thing I'd like to point out to you is how this participant guide is a little bit different than things you've been experiencing in the past. So we will use the front half of this participant guide throughout the day. So if you just kind of look at the tabs on the right-hand side, you see we'll start with the foundation, we'll go into mindsets and fill into skill sets throughout the day. But if you look at that orange tab towards the back, you see something that is called the playbook. This is part of that 12-week journey. And this is where you actually use your participant guide in a very different way than you may be used to. So if you take a look at your playbook, it's actually designed to be taken back to your office and set up in a tent formation to remain in front of you throughout this journey. If you turn past that very first page, you actually see week 1 is the very first page. You'll see the tabs along the bottom of the page, and you'll follow along that playbook on a week-by-week system. So the first part of your materials that are a little bit different is the participant guide itself and the playbook that follows. And so we'll pay specific attention to that throughout the day and help you become very familiar with that. There are also some other materials that we'll be using throughout the day. At one point in time, we will be focusing on preparing and planning for our prospecting calls, for our prospecting emails and in-mails, those types of things. We'll spend a significant amount of time today on what is called developing a prospecting call plan. We've given you 20 of these in a pad. We'll be using one of them today. And we've also given you these in an electronic format as well. And so there's a thumb drive included in the full kit. The thumb drive contains some videos that will be used to enhance your learning along the 12-week system. They also include all of the materials in electronic format, and so those are also included in the full system. Last thing, and probably one of the coolest things, are the actual cards themselves. So if you take a look at your cards, if you've not opened those, take a second to do so. These cards are designed to be a reminder, if you will, of the entire journey that you've been on. If you pay specific attention to the orange cards first, the orange cards represent kind of the summary of all of the major points and topics and learnings of the day, all the skill sets that we cover, all the tool sets and mindsets are all in a refresher type of a form on each of those cards. You can use them in conjunction with your playbook as you go on this journey for the next 12 weeks. Pay close attention to the yellow ones. One of the skill sets that we'll be learning today is called yellow lights. How do you effectively handle pushbacks and stalls and doubts? How do you language that so that when you reach out to your prospective client and they push back, how do you handle that to try and further get that appointment? So we'll be doing a lot of that work in here today. And in the yellow cards, those are actually what we call practice cards. We'll use them here today, and we encourage you to use them along your journey as well. You'll see on the front of them that there's just a typical pushback that you may hear. You might reach out to someone and they say, well, really, I'm not interested, but thank you. Do you simply just hang up the phone and say, okay, one down, or do you have something to say back to that to try to enhance the conversation? You see on the back of those practice cards, there's an explanation of how we would use yellow light. So we'll practice these today. You actually have a chance to partner with some folks in the room. You have a chance to develop some of your own based on some yellow lights that you commonly hear. And then we encourage you to use these cards going forward as we go. And so those are the materials that we'll be using throughout the day. Any questions on the materials themselves? We'll be diving into each one specifically as we go forward. We just wanted to give you a highlight and an overview of each of those as we kind of start our day. So if you'll turn over to page 1 in your participant guide. So we're inside of that foundation section. You actually see what we refer to as the Helping Clients Succeed sales cycle. Now, if you've been in sales long enough, you know that there are many phases of a sales cycle, and you see the Helping Clients Succeed sales cycle here on page 1 and also up on the screen. Just to help you out, if you look at the bottom right-hand corner of any of our pages on our screens, that will refer to the page number inside of your participant guide. And so if you get lost, feel free to look there or just reach out to me and I'll help you understand where we are. In the sales cycle, you see that there are 4 different phases of the Helping Clients Succeed sales cycle. Towards the top, there's the aspect of planning. How do you plan to be effective? Then you go into fill. How do you fill your pipeline? Down into flow, flowing opportunities through or out of the pipeline, and eventually winning. How do you win and be more successful in that? Today, we're going to specifically focus on the concept of filling your pipeline. As we look at that concept, there's really only 2 ways to go about filling your pipeline. Either people call you or you call them. Now, I don't know how it is for you, but how many of you enjoy being able to just sit back and answer phones all day long and just fill your pipeline that way? Anybody there? So we love when that happens, right? You just sit back and it's just a great way to do sales. Unfortunately, in today's world, that doesn't happen as often as we like. So we've got to figure out, how do we become highly effective at this concept of prospecting, going out and creating business and filling our prospecting pipeline. So that's what we're going to focus on today. If you take a look at the bottom of page 1, can I have someone volunteer to read that phrase there where it says helping clients succeed? Can you volunteer? Just raise your hand. Would you please read that?
Helping clients succeed is the essence of sales. The more passionately and skillfully we focus on creating success for our clients, the more successful we will be.
And so helping clients succeed is the body of work. It all comes from a book referred to as Let's Get Real or Let's Not Play, written by a gentleman named Mahan Khalsa and Randy Illig. And so helping clients succeed, as we say, is not a euphemism for sales. It's a belief of how we go about doing business as sales professionals to really help focus on our clients. We focus on ourselves as well, but we focus mostly on their success first and then our success afterwards. All of this starts with what we refer to as an end in mind. If you take a look over on page 2, let's find out why we're here today. So if you think about the end in mind, as it says on the screen and in your book, our end in mind is to make significant improvement in your prospecting pipeline in the next 12 weeks. If you'd please take your pen, I want you to underline 2 key aspects of our end in mind. The first is I would like you to underline that word significant. A one-day event, let's have a little bit of an improvement in our pipeline. That'd be great. For a 12-week journey, we're expecting significant improvement in your prospecting pipeline. We're asking a lot from you. 12 weeks is a lot in today's world. And for that, we're aiming for that significant improvement. Second thing I'd like you to underline is the aspect of 12 weeks. This is not about a one-day training event. Although they're helpful, to gain significant improvement, we have learned that you have to focus on the long haul. And so it's about a 12-week journey that we're going to go on together. And that's where the playbook comes into mind. So from that standpoint, we want to jump right in and establish that significance for you as an individual. So if you take a look at the middle of page 2, we want to walk through a little exercise with you and try and define what significance is for you. So if you take a look at those 3 lines, what we want to try and do is figure out what would significant be for you as an individual. We've got many different types of sales professionals in the room. For some, that might be a lower number. For some, it might be a significantly higher number. The question is, what is it for you? So if you take a look at that first line, we want you to think about, and I'll give you a minute or so to do so, what is the current value of your prospecting pipeline? If you think about your pipeline today, what would you say is the current value of that pipeline? Now, I know that you probably don't, well, some of you may. You probably don't have your pipeline in your pocket where you can pull it out and take a look and get that real number. Just make an educated guess. During week 1 of the playbook, you actually come back to this and make that number real by looking at the actual data inside of your prospecting pipeline. So for right now, just think about your current pipeline and put a value in that line for me. Where do you think your current prospecting pipeline is as of this morning? Just put a value in that first line there. Now, the next thing we would like you to do is to define significance. What do I mean by that? What I'd like you to do is think about, if I'm going to invest 12 weeks of my time, what would be a significant improvement for me? And so think about, if we're asking you to invest 50 minutes to an hour a week for the next 12 weeks, what would you need to see in a return for that? What's in essence, the ROI? What am I looking for? And so in that second line, what do you want your pipeline value to be at the end of this 12-week journey? Again, it's not just a little bit of a growth, it's a significant growth in your prospecting pipeline. Go ahead and fill that number in. All right, so once you have those first two lines filled in, we want you to figure out what is your individual ROI going to be for this journey. And so if you'll subtract the first line from the second line, you'll discover what we call the net increase in your prospecting pipeline. If you subtract the first number from the second number, you'll develop what we refer to as your personal net increase. Now, if you're here with an organization and you've got team members working on this together, there's also different models to think about in terms of a team's ROI. And so if you're a leader, you can get your team together and figure out what the net increase is for the team and establish ROI from that capacity as well. So if you think about what we're saying to you, we're saying that this is not about a one-day training event, but a 12-week journey. Spending about 50 minutes to an hour per week in your playbook, developing significant improvement in your prospecting pipeline. So if you think about what this actually represents, today in the 12-week playbook afterwards, this actually represents that net increase that you see there in that line. And so whatever value that is, that's the value that you can attribute if you follow the process. And that's the big if. And so if you just come to a one-day event, you leave, you're looking for that significant growth, probably it's not going to happen. If you stick to the playbook system, you input the time needed, what we're saying is that net increase is what you can expect from this. And so as we think about that, we want to actually think about the journey. So if you take a look at the graphic in the middle of page 2, you actually see the graphic in a representation of the pipeline growth going forward. And so what I'd like you to do is start with today. There on the left-hand side, you see where it says work session date, and write in June 11th on that date. So that represents today. Roughly 12 weeks from today, and we'll go out to the Friday of that day, just to end on the end of a week, I'd like you to put in September 13th. First of all, how many of you does that freak out that 12 weeks from today is September 13th? So, well, how can that be 12 weeks away? And so that represents, in essence, the completion of our journey will be the Friday of September the 13th. As you see represented here, the process is broken down into the weekly playbook application, where you actually begin to do this stuff, the implementation phase. And then you see something different right there around week 4. And if I can actually have you turn back to the playbook itself, I'd like to actually show you the week 4 tab. So if you go to week 4, it's an orange tab. And then if you turn one more, you see a gray tab that actually has a check mark on it. Now that is what we're going to refer to as a check-in period. There is one, as you see on the screen, at week 4. There is one at week 8, and then there is one at the completion of the journey at week 12. Couple really important things happen in that check-in. First and foremost, if you're working with a team, which we highly suggest, you're working with a coach, whether that's a true leader, a sales leader, someone like that, or a peer leader, we recommend that you check in with that person. And in that check-in, you'll see broken down specifically what we're asking for in that check-in. So we don't want to get to 12 weeks and say, hey, how'd it go? We want to check in on a monthly basis with you. And so at the end of that 4 weeks, we're asking you to check in with your leader. We're also asking you to check in with Franklin Covey. So you'll see an email address right there on that page where we ask you to check in with Franklin Covey and let us know, how are you doing on the completion of your goal? What's been working with you? What challenges have you had from that standpoint? You see that check-in on week 4. You also see it again on week 8 on the second gray tab, and then again at the completion of this journey. And so again, as we think about the process, as we go through the process between now and September 13th, we really want you to focus on those report outs. Very, very, very important to focus on. We want to start by having everybody just do some introductions. And so we're going to do this because there's so many of us just at a table level. Throughout the day, we're going to have you focus on doing a lot of peer coaching, do a lot of different practice exercises. We'll be mixing you up. We may stay with your table. We may have you find someone different. For the introductions, let's just do them at a table level. We're going to call them what we call turbo introductions. So you see what we're asking for here on the screen. Just what's your name? What role do you play? If you're from different organizations, what organization? And where are you from? And so if I can just have a volunteer at each table, start the introductions, and we'll just do it at a table level, and then we'll get back together. So if someone would start at each table, please. All right, sounds like everybody has had a chance to introduce themselves. Again, we'll be doing a lot of work as tables, having table discussions throughout the day. We'll be doing some work in terms of just another partner, and then we'll also have some opportunities today where you just mix and mingle, and if you have not met someone, just introduce yourself at that point in time. As we move forward, we're going to go into our very first video. In this video, you're going to meet a gentleman named Craig Christensen, who is the co-founder of the sales performance practice at Franklin Covey, and he's going to talk to you about what we call our promise. The promise is our promise to you for what your return is going to be if and when you complete the 12-week journey. On page 5 of your participant guide, you're going to find a blank notes page. What I would recommend that you do is during the video, just take any quick notes, just bullet points from the standpoint of things that pique your interest during this video. At the end of the video, we'll have a table discussion about what you found interesting during this video. And so let's check in with Craig on what we call our promise.
Hello, I'm Craig Christensen, co-founder of the sales performance practice for Franklin Covey. Today marks the beginning of a 12-week effort designed to help you dramatically increase your sales pipeline. The basis of our philosophy is centered on our work with Franklin Covey colleagues Mahan Khalsa and Randy Illig. Together they wrote the best-selling book, Let's Get Real or Let's Not Play, a groundbreaking sales work on how to help clients succeed. It focuses on mutual benefit during the sales process. Helping clients succeed is not a euphemism for sales, it's the essence of sales. The more passionately and skillfully we focus on creating success for our clients, the more successful we will be as salespeople. For more than a decade, we've coached over 2,300 sales executives and worked intensively with over 35,000 sales professionals. We've researched and experimented with the best practices of the world's top sales performers. We've discovered the process and principles that can help you replicate the successes we've helped others create. Our promise is that you can become significantly better at filling your pipeline by following this proven system. By the time you leave today, you'll have an understanding of the mindsets, the skill sets, and the tool sets needed to dramatically increase your sales pipeline. After 12 weeks, you will have increased your mastery of these skill sets and tool sets and will be reaping the benefits of becoming significantly better at filling your pipeline. As with anything, we become proficient to the degree we are willing to practice. We believe that you can, if you choose, become highly effective at prospecting. Not just good, great. We also believe that with practice, you can replicate what other top performers do. We believe that you will leave this work session with everything you need to start immediately. And finally, we believe implementing this process is worth it to your future success. If after our time together you agree and decide to get significantly better, you'll enjoy tremendous results. Welcome to day 1 of your journey.
If you'll just turn to page 5 and just take down some quick notes for yourself. What did you find of interest in that video segment? Right, who would be willing to share something? Steve, go ahead.
Just like that it included kind of the 3 sets, so the mindset, skill set, and tool set. So you're given the whole scope or whole range of things to help you achieve.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you take a look at the model on page 3, we're going to talk about that model, but it includes all of those. And so you see the results down there on the bottom left corner. Those results come from the application, as you said, of the mindsets first, the way we think about effectively prospecting, and then the skill sets and tool sets that follow along with that. So we'll cover all 3 of those throughout the day. Absolutely. What else did you hear in that video?
I think the mutual benefits. So it's you're looking for something that is going to be of good value to both of you.
Yeah, and it's a mutual value, right? And so, and not everybody thinks that way. And so what we found is the top performers find value for both of us. It's not altruistic where it's all about value for you. It's value for both of us, and we think about it in that capacity. And so that's one of the keys to success. One more. What else did you find in the video?
I think it requires practice. This is not It's like even though it's skills, it needs practice to get there.
Yeah, and you heard in there the invitation that if you're willing, so it's really a personal decision, right? And so if you think about it from that standpoint, it involves some practice. So it's not a quick fix, it's not attend a one-day, 8-hour session and all of a sudden become a world-class prospector. It's here's the recipe. Are you willing to follow the recipe for the 12-week journey? And so that's a very good point from that standpoint as well. And so we will check back in with Craig throughout the day on lots of videos and learn from Craig what is going to be required to be able to make this actually work for us. As we jump into the day, we want to actually start with something that we call our best shot. So I'm going to invite you to turn over to page 4 in your participant material. Now, if you think about the best shot, what we're going to ask you to do, if you look at the instructions at the top of the page 4, it says this is your first contact with an important prospect. So the day is all about filling your pipeline, all about prospecting. And so if you think about it, at some point in this journey, you're going to have to pick up the phone, write an email, send an in-mail, send a text. Some way you're going to have to communicate out with the prospect to try to create this business. What we want to find out is, where are you now? How are you doing that now? And so we're going to refer to this as the best shot. This is your first contact with an important prospect. What do you say in the first 15 seconds to interest them in further discussion? What we'd like you to do is just think of yourself, think of what you say today, and write down what we call your best shot. Now, let me just clarify something for you right from the beginning. We're not going to be sharing these with anybody. So it's not as if I'm going to ask you to stand up and say, hey, let's hear your best thinking, and we all judge him, good or bad. We're not going to do that. This is for your interest only. So we want you to just spend, I'm going to give you about 3, maybe 4 minutes of time, but just draft out. Now, I need you to write this down because we're going to use this later in the day for a comparison purpose. So just take 3 or 4 minutes, think about what you would say. I'm a top prospect you've been really trying to get a hold of. You've got me on the phone. You're sending me an email, an in-mail, a text, whatever you do. What do you say? Write some stuff down there on page 4. All right, looks like most everybody is done. Now, as I said, we are not going to share these. You feel free to share them with someone if you want some feedback. We are not going to do that publicly. What you will do is towards the end of the day, once we've done our work and we've applied the skill sets and tool sets throughout the day, we will come back and compare your end state thinking with this is your current state thinking and just ask you to do a self-analysis and share some thoughts. And so that's how we'll be using that going forward. That exercise finishes up the foundation section of the participant guide.